Okay, what up ladies and gents, it is patch day. This is the big patch that everyone has been waiting for, and quite frankly there are 132 changes, I counted. So there's a lot in this patch and we're going to cover them stage by stage. This is going to be a long video. It's not going to by any means be a short video. If you guys are looking for the short summarized version, I'm sure some other people out there can do that for you, but this is the one that gives you the discussion, the information, the full detail. So if you want to read the patch notes like an audiobook along with some discussion and comments, then this is the place for you. All right, let's get started. First, let's talk about the overview before we start everything else. All right, overview. Yes. I pronounce words funny. Get over it. Sometimes it happens because I'm Asian. Okay, I'm kidding. Now, for this patch, there are some major areas of interest. There are now visible supply lines and attack origins in the Galactic War. So we can see that. Stratagem, weapon, planet, and enemy balancing updates have been made. There's a lot of crash fixes, stability improvements, and other updates. There's an invite-only lobby creation now. Okay? So that is basically what's in this patch. The rightmost option in the lobby settings currently only localized in English. Additional languages coming in the next patch. Okay, fair enough. Now, let's get started with the real meat of this. You guys have heard the introduction. Now let's get into the meat. All right, let's go through all these balancing changes. Cue some music, because we're going to need some background for this, aren't we? There we go. Okay. Now, the goal with stratagem balances in this patch is that they wanted to buff up some weaker stratagems to make them more viable and add more possible variety for loadouts. All right. So what did they actually do? You can actually read the blog post, and this is also linked in the description of this video. So both the patch notes and the blog post will be linked so you can read them both. But basically, here are the changes. Starting with the rocket sentry, they have number 1, decrease the spread of the rocket sentry. It will now prioritize larger targets. They have increased the targeting distance by about 25%, by 33%, going from 75 to 100 meters. They have decreased the number of rockets fired per salvo to get better ammo economy. Instead of firing 2 rockets at once, it now fires 1 rocket at a time. The ammo capacity should stay the same. The explosion radius of each rocket has gone from 1 meter to 4 meters. That's a 400% increase, but it remains to be seen whether or not this will be useful. That being said, the rocket sentry is now sounding pretty good. They have decreased the explosion armor penetration. Okay, so this is a nerf. Let's be honest about that. This is a nerf, but they have also stated that although the explosion can no longer damage heavily armored enemies, the projectile still has enough AP to damage heavily armored targets. Okay, so the projectile can damage a heavily armored target, but the explosion cannot. This will mostly see use against Battle Titans and the like, so I'm eager to try these on a Helm's Deep mission at some point. They've increased the projectile damage from 200 to 300. That's a 50% increase in damage. This might actually make the rocket sentry pretty viable. The projectile can still penetrate heavily armored targets, but the explosion no longer will damage them. This is very interesting to me because it seems like they want it to be a bit of an AoE type of horde clear sentry. We'll see how that works out for them. The machine gun sentry, which pretty much felt like a worse version of the Gatling sentry, now has its cooldown reduced from 180 seconds down to 120 seconds. All right, this is a pretty positive change, which is to see the machine gun sentry being used over the Gatling sentry in missions where you have to reposition quickly. That being said, this is mostly going to see use at lower levels of gameplay rather than higher levels of gameplay, because I can't think of a single time where I thought about plopping down a machine gun sentry. So, positive change. Let's see how it works out for them. Now, there have been other changes being made. These sentries all received an increase in durability from 0% to 80%. This increase is in relation to small arms fire, not necessarily explosions. This is because they were taking full damage from just being shot at. So destroying a sentry is not so easy anymore, and enemy small arms fire should not just instantly obliterate your sentries. Hopefully this will work out well. I think it might certainly help on some missions so that some little guys don't just come up and shank my sentry. For the HMG emplacement, they've increased the rotation speed to double of what it was before. This is because the slow rotation speed did not really benefit it. It was basically designed to be a fixed type of defense that could quickly respond to the situation. So they have changed that. Hopefully this works out for them again. The MD6 anti-personnel minefield, they've increased explosion damage from 250 to 350. they've made this like basically a 40% increase in the damage to the minefield. The reason why they have done this is because they basically wanted the anti-personnel mines to actually do some more serious damage. That being said, I again don't really see a lot of viability for these except on defense missions. We're gonna have to see how that works out because we're not getting the anti-tank mines. We're gonna save those kids, so that's not happening. And anti-personnel minefields aren't really used in the field anyway, so they're probably still gonna have a low pick rate, but maybe at lower difficulties they might be somewhat helpful. In terms of incendiary mines, they're increasing the explosion damage from 150 to 210. The intention is mostly to set people on fire. This change would be approximately a 40% increase again, because it's 60. It's an increase of 60, which 60 divided by 150 is obviously 40%. So yeah, it seems to me that they're buffing both mines by about 40%. So will they see more use? I leave that decision up to you. You guys use them and tell me if they're actually any good. All right. Orbital Gatling. Okay, now this one is a big one. They've increased the fire rate of the Orbital Gatling by 25%, so it will now fire faster. They've increased the number of rounds per salvo from 30 to 60, effectively doubling what it had before. And they've increased the armor penetration. It can now damage heavily armored enemies. This is actually going to be pretty useful because it will really help against bug breaches, which is where I'm considering using the Gatling. Will the Gatling actually be good against other targets? That actually remains to be seen, because it now says it can damage heavily armored enemies. I'm actually kind of eager to see how that works out, because if it can damage heavily armored enemies, what's to stop me from throwing it on a fabricator, or what's to stop me from throwing it on a tank? We will test this live on stream for sure, so that's going to be checked out. In terms of the Orbital Precision Strike, they have decreased the cooldown from 100 seconds to 90 seconds. Not enough in my opinion. It should have been decreased down to 80 seconds. They've decreased the spawn and call-in timer from 4 seconds to 2 seconds. So it should come down 50% faster, which will make targeting Bile Titans a lot easier. That being said, call-in time modifier of 50% is still active on automatons, which could create problems. So we have to be aware of that. And the Orbital Precision Strike going down to 90 seconds is not as big of a help as people think. So we will see how it feels, but honest to God, I'm still not enthused to use it in the field that often. We'll have to see how it goes. All right, we'll have to see how it goes. That being said, it is still a potent stratagem that many people should consider. And, you know, after I test the Gatling, I'll definitely be testing that as well. Orbital Airburst Strike decreased the cooldown from 120 seconds to 100 seconds. This makes it faster to cool down, but again, is it really going to be useful? I don't know. The Gatling is looking like a much better option with a 70-second cooldown. Honest to God, if they had made the Gatling, I don't know, it still seems like it would outperform the Airburst, but we'll see. Okay, the 110mm rocket pods, they have said that while these changes might look like a straight up nerf, that is not the intention. Okay, let's actually assess them first. Please see the blog post for more information. You can definitely check that out. Link is in the description of the video. They have improved the targeting of the rocket pods, which should be good. They have increased the projectile armor penetration. It now does 100% damage to heavily armored enemies instead of 50%, but they've decreased the projectile damage by a lot. It's by 55%. So although they've doubled the armor penetration, they've decreased the projectile damage. This is to compensate for improved targeting and extra damage from the increased armor penetration. Why would you need to do that? Why not make the 110mm rocket pods a perfect option for dealing with single targets? And if it was too overpowered, you see, this is where they're getting it wrong. I'm very excited for 132 changes, but at the same time, this is not it. Arrowhead, please take this with a positive, please take this feedback positively, but this is not it. This is not the way that you do buffs. If you want to do buffs, just do straight up buff, and if it becomes too overpowered, then you can either bring other stuff up to it. And I know you guys are afraid of power creep, but guess what? It's a PvE game. Stop trying to aim for balance, go for power creep, embrace the power creep, and you guys are going to get so much larger an audience, because then everybody feels like everything is powerful. They'll be spoiled for choice. You want them to be spoiled for choice, not feel like, this is kind of an okay option, but this one comes out slightly ahead, so I'm going to use this one. That's not variety. That's what you tried to get rid of, but failed to do so, and now you're still doing it. Don't do this. This is wrong, okay? So I can see why they had to put that statement, like, these changes might look like a straight up nerf. They are. Let's call a spade a spade. This is a nerf, all right? And I know many people said, if I see even a single nerf, I'm flipping the table, I'm uninstalling the game. I would say don't uninstall the game because of this, but we should recognize it for what it is. It is a nerf, and the rocket pods we'll have to see how truly viable they are. We'll test it in the field, of course, but decreasing the projectile damage by 55%, or what looks to be about 55%, I didn't do an exact calculation on this one, doesn't exactly strike me with a lot of confidence. Okay, the Eagle Strafing Run has increased its number of uses from 3 to 4. They've increased the armor penetration, and the Eagle Strafing Run can now damage heavily armored enemies. This is pretty insane, so we're gonna have to actually try this out in the field as well. I really want to see what my Eagle Strafing Run can do, because it might actually be pretty good against the automatons. The automatons are notorious for their annoying abilities, so this might be exactly what I need. The automatons are... Okay, I got a random pop-up from Microsoft, thank you, but that is really not needed. Yeah, the automatons themselves are, you know, the type of enemy where their bot drops can be a bit spread out, and the Eagle Strafing Run might be the solution for this. I don't know, I'm gonna check it out because it seems pretty interesting, and it might be quite an option that I would like to use, especially when a bot drop comes in. You know, we might have to actually start using the strafing runs. The grenade launcher has seen its explosion damage increased by from 350 to 400. I don't know how good of a change this will be. The grenade launcher's ammo was its main problem. I don't think anyone really had a problem with the explosion damage, but the ammo count of the grenade launcher was simply not significant enough for it to compete with other options. So the grenade launcher getting a roughly about a 1/7 damage increase is not really very encouraging, but meh, you know, it might be all right. We'll see. The heavy machine gun. All right. They've increased the projectile damage by a whopping 50%, going from 100 to 150. They've increased the projectile damage against durable body parts, going from 23% to 33%. They've decreased the fire rate at the upper levels, so now it's a 450, 600, 750 gun. They've decreased the reload time from 7 seconds down to 5.5 seconds, and they've increased the stagger strength. Might be viable, we'll see, you know, we'll see what the heavy machine gun can do. As for the MG43 machine gun, they have effectively decreased the reload time from 4 seconds down to 3.5 seconds, increased the maximum number of magazines from 3 seconds to 4 to 4, from 3 to 4, 3 seconds, 3 to 4. This is the LMG, the normal machine gun, yeah? For all the machine guns, including the Gatling Sentry, Machine Gun Sentry, and the Exo Patriot Suits Gatling gun, they've increased the projectile damage from 80 to 90. Okay, so you're seeing a little bit of a damage increase there as well. They've increased the total amount is 12.5%. They've increased projectile damage against durable body parts from 7.5% up to 25%. So we should actually see quite a bit more armor penetration from the regular MG against automatons. And this should actually really help, especially lower level players. They're going to feel like their trusty dusty machine gun can actually do better against automatons. It's actually a worthwhile change that we should probably test. In terms of the Liberator Stalwart and the Guard Dog, the normal Guard Dog, not the laser one, they've increased the projectile damage against durable body parts from 10% to 23%. This is, again, a very interesting change, one that I'm kind of liking, so that sounds pretty good. The Liberator Concussive, they've increased projectile damage against durable body parts from 23% to 35%. So the Liberator Concussive might do a little bit better against armor targets. That being said, you know, it's probably still light armor penetrating, so we have to consider that. The Adjudicator has seen an increase in its magazine capacity of 20%. Sounds like a lot, but it's just 5 extra bullets. It's gone from 25 up to 30. They've increased the projectile damage against durable body parts from 10% to 20%. It's still medium armor penetrating, but they have not increased the projectile damage, which strikes me as a bit strange, but okay. I mean, we'll test out how that works as we go along. All right, so we'll have to see how that works. In terms of the Tenderizer got a pretty significant buff of over 50% in terms of its projectile damage. The projectile damage went from 60 up to 95. It is now a highly accurate type of assault rifle. The ammo capacity has gone down, though. It's gone from 35 down to 30, and they've increased the projectile damage against durable body parts from 10% to 17%. They've decreased the number of magazines from 10 to 8, and increase the stagger strength of the Tenderizer. But will this be enough to make it good? Again, we'll have to see, alright? Okay, next. Plas 101 Purifier. They've increased the projectile armor penetration to be the same as the explosion. Okay? They've decreased the explosion damage fall off. Okay, I hope that that'll be good. We will have to see how the Purifier actually goes. I hope that its projectile will actually penetrate armor properly. We'll definitely test it in the field. The explosive crossbow now has increased explosion armor penetration, and it will be the same as the projectile. Increased demolition strength. You can now destroy bug holes and bot fabricator buildings with the crossbow. This is worth testing. They've added a medium penetration tag, so now this thing can penetrate medium armor. The crossbow is starting to look a little good here. Okay, the Eruptor. They've now increased the total damage from 420 to 570 damage per shot, but will the Eruptor still be good? We'll have to see once again. The Diligence. They've increased projectile damage against durable body parts from 10% to 25%. Okay, so this is an interesting one. I don't know if it'll help, but I'm not sure if it'll. It seems to only apply to the normal Diligence, not the counter sniper. So we're gonna have to see how that goes. Okay, in terms of the other updates for balancing, they have updated the recoil stance modifiers. They've made changes to the recoil stance modifiers to make them more consistent and also reward being prone more. Almost all of them will improve recoil, and only 2 have been made worse. However, if you actually read the blog post, one thing which strikes me as pretty darn scary is the fact that they've increased the recoil when you are crouching from 50% up to 60%. This is not good, in my opinion. This is a nerf to us. Now, while the moving stance was decreased from 125 to 100%, if you're moving while crouching and trying to aim your weapon, that's probably not a good idea. So I'm not too happy with this 10% increase, but yeah, taking 10% more off from proning, where both basically crouching and proning was the same. Now proning will be 20% less than crouching in terms of recoil, but why? I don't get it. I mean, I don't know. I would have just kept crouching the same and made prone like 30% or something, but it is what it is, you know? That is Arrowhead style of balancing. Okay, now, time for a musical change. All right, we finished up with the balancing changes. Now it's time for us to go into gameplay. All right, number 1, and this is a big change that everybody's gonna be happy about. AA defenses are gone. Gone. No more AA defenses to ever worry about. All right, this is because it was unfun. Now, please, you guys need better operation modifiers. I'll give you guys suggestions if you want. Phone me up, RealAsianRobot@gmail.com. We'll talk shop. Okay, my time ain't cheap, but you pay me, I'll help you guys, no problem. All right, disable the retrieve essential personnel defend event mission for the time being. So retrieving essential personnel, no more there. So even if on a defense, all you're gonna see is Helm's Deep and some other missions, which is really good. All right, they're gonna rework it, so that's pretty good there. Super samples now spawn on difficulty 6. Okay, cool. Might be easier for people to get their upgrades now. Sieve Artillery Stratagem is no longer blocked by Stratagem Jammers or Ion Storms, and is available after the mission timer ends or when the destroyer leaves close orbit. Remember how everybody on social media was all like, Asian Robot, you know, that thing connects to the destroyer, so it's not gonna be available. Bro, guess what? Fun changes are good for the fucking game. So please understand, this is a positive change. There you go. I told you they were gonna cater to casuals. They're doing exactly that. Okay? So all the people who really want everything hard, tough, sad, upset, please, that's not the way to have fun. Okay? Good. Enemies in melee range of the gates in the evacuate high value assets mission will now attack it more consistently. Okay. They've added the ability to chat from in-game menus and mission loading screen. Okay. They've updated some first-person crosshairs to improve readability. Okay. Invite-only lobbies are now supported. Okay, good. There's a new armor passive peak physique. Okay, we know about this from the Warbond. That's pretty good. Okay, planets and hazards. The spike plant has been reworked. No more causes bleeding or stamina drain if you're hit by the plant explosion or the spikes. It'll now pop 3 times, sending spikes everywhere, dealing increased damage. You're probably still gonna be hit shot by the shrapnel though, just saying. Okay, fire tornadoes. Fire tornadoes have had their behavior changed. They should no longer feel like they actively respond to player movement, and they should move more randomly now. While a fire tornado storm takes place, enemy vision is reduced. Player vision is unaffected. So maybe Hellmire and Menkent aren't going to be ass planets anymore. Fire tornadoes being more random should result in more variance in situations players find themselves in. Tornadoes are significantly less likely to pile up and overlap on extraction points or objectives, and will generally be easier to deal with. This remains to be seen. We will check it out, obviously. We will check it out. Oops, sorry. The music played incorrectly. My apologies for that. Okay. Now, Tremors. Tremors have had their spawns tweaked to be slightly more random. Tremors have had their epicenter size and effect range increased. These changes should result in more situations where enemies away from the player get stunned, as well as reducing how consistently a player has a tremor occur next to them. Okay. They've added VFX for Ion Storm, so hopefully we can actually hear the lightning now. I'd be really interested to see that. Okay. Big change, guys. Visibility. Visibility got changed. A lot of planets had their fog amounts tweaked to be less harsh and dense to provide less fatigue from constantly fighting on planets with bad visibility. We intend for there still to be foggy planets with worse visibility, but the balance was a bit off. So desert planets like Eruptor Prime, Chort Bay, Hellmire, and similar, you no longer need to use your psychic powers to figure out where enemies are. I know that this was not a problem for us because we come from Darktide, but I know that for many of you, okay, you guys weren't born with psychic powers, so I understand it was very difficult to target enemies through the bad visibility, okay? But don't worry, they have come to save you. Alright? Light should no longer blind players. Desert planets, highland planets should no longer be as foggy, so it's pretty good. The unexploded hell bomb. The unexploded malfunctioning hell bombs will now explode immediately if hit by strong explosions or heavy weaponry. They will still have the same delay if hit by small arms fire or weaker attacks, just so you know. Vegetation that's large enough to slow the player down now has an extra function. When inside the vegetation that slows you down, Helldivers will be harder to detect, reducing their detection range by enemies. This effect stacks with other detection reducing effects such as nighttime, being crouched or prone, or things such as the scout armor passive. This means that stealth play will be more interesting with vegetation. That being said, you know we don't play stealth, we go loud, alright? Now, acid rain. Sorry, the acid effect. The acid effect applied by hunters, bug mines will now allow you to sprint while under the effect and will slow you by 30% instead of 50%. The duration of the acid, however, has been increased from the previous 3 seconds to 4 seconds. These changes are intended to make it less punishing for players to be slowed while fighting the Terminids. This allows us to use it in more places without making the experience very punishing. For example, the Bile Spewers, because the Bile Spewers will now slow you down. The changes later on, I know, but let's not take it too badly until we see the effect, alright? But yes, the acid effect change should be better. It should slow you only by 30% now. And don't forget, motivational shocks still exists, so that's a thing. Armored enemy balance. They have toned down the number of heavily armored enemies like Bile Titans charges on higher difficulty and will instead spawn more hordes of smaller enemies. I heard this in a previous patch note, so please make sure it actually happens this time. Guys, come on. You gotta work with us here on this, alright? If you want people to bring horde clear equipment, then just make sure that when you say you're gonna tone down the spawns of Bile Titans, that you actually do that. Alright, we should not be seeing them in large numbers. Okay? Okay, good. I like that. The difference should be quite noticeable, and the amount should be at least 30% less than before the bug breaches. Hey, I think I've seen this exact post before. Hey, remember seeing this post? I think we saw this post before, alright? They increased the spawns of smaller enemies to compensate, and then we ended up with more smaller enemies and still the same number of Bile Titans in charges. So you know, this time it better go through for real, alright? They have also toned down how many Hulks spawn for the automatons. Thank God, because they're annoying. Not difficult, just annoying. Especially because the flamethrower could one-shot you. That being said, they've said that it won't do that, but we'll go through that later. Okay? Their intent is to ease up on the demand of anti-tank weapons, and by having more of other enemies gives a better incentive for the group to bring stratagems and weapons that take care of hordes. So there you go. Patrol spawning is now back to how it worked before the patrol spawn change, with some slight tweaks so that levels are less empty if you are far away from important locations with enemy presence. Alright, so the spawn rates of patrols are now back to normal. Stunning. Medium and large size enemies now do not get stunned as easily as before. This will not affect the stratagems that stun, but will affect how easily the Pummeler can stun large enemies. Sorry, that's a nerf right there. That's the Pummeler nerf coming in because why? The Pummeler could stun the charges. It still sucked. I don't understand why you need to do this. This is silly. Okay? The Pummeler is a concussive weapon. It's supposed to be able to stun. That's literally the only reason to take it over the defender. No. This is a bad change, okay? But we'll see how it plays out. I mean, I don't use the Pummeler, but those that do are probably going to be pretty unhappy with it. So there is another, the only weapon in the Polar Patriots that was useful. Take that. Yeet into the bin. Okay, Terminids. Now it's time to walk through enemy changes, all right? For enemy changes, we're gonna need a different tune, all right? It's one of my favorite tunes. Let's talk enemy changes, all right? The Bow Spear and the Nursing Spear. Spears will now get slowed if they lose their legs. Spear Puke now applies the acid effect. Spear Puke can now only damage Helldivers up to 4 times per second, and the Helldiver cannot take damage multiple times from the same projectile. This should reduce instances where you are instantly killed by it. Okay, we'll test and see whether or not the Bile Spears have stopped their one-shotting. Bile Titan. The Bile Titan's head is slightly less durable against weaker anti-tank weapons. It's not a large change, but will mostly matter for weapons like the Railgun. Okay? The Bile Titan's Puke can now only damage the Helldiver 4 times per second, and the Helldiver cannot take damage multiple times from the same projectile. The damage is still very deadly, so running through their Puke is not recommended. The Puke also has a bigger spread, okay? So Bile Titan's got a buff. The Charger Behemoth is now joining the battle on higher difficulties. It can also take more damage than before, so this allows us to spawn fewer chargers but still retain the difficulty. Okay. I hope that people are prepared to deal with the Charger Behemoth. Chargers will now only show the bleed out effects from the body if the bleed out state has started. It can still show bleed out effects from the mouth without having started the bleed out state, so take note of that, yeah? Okay, automatons. The Hulk Scorcher's flamethrower now does less damage and cannot damage Helldivers more than 4 times per second. In addition, the Helldiver cannot be damaged multiple times by the same flame projectile. This should reduce instances where you are instantaneously killed by it. Automaton tanks. The tank armor value on the front has been lowered to be the same as the non-vent sections on the rear of the tank. The intent was initially that it was supposed to be more armored in the front, but the visual language didn't show that. The vents on the back of the tank turret still has the same armor value as before, but will check for explosion directions correctly now. The damage of exploding automaton jump packs has now been decreased by 50%, but it will still set you on fire, so hopefully they won't one-shot you anymore. I hope this change will go through well. Now, let's talk about the Galactic War changes, alright? This one is looking good. They have stated that they're introducing supply lines and an origin of attacks. Supply lines were previously not shown on the Galactic War map to reduce clutter and improve readability. However, based on feedback from the community, they have decided to implement showing them on the map. This solution tries to maintain the general readability while still exposing the system to players in-game. Thank God, because players did not know shit about this. You will now be able to see which planet an attack is originating from, potentially allowing for the community to stop the attack at its source. We have also updated visuals in the sector and planet info pop-ups. Okay? So hopefully there'll be more planet info pop-ups. Now, let's get through the fixes, alright? It's time for us to go through the fixes. This is going to be a long section. The spear's targeting has been reworked and will now function better, but it cannot target fabricators anymore. So this change is not intended and will be fixed in the near future. Okay, take note. Intense heat and extreme cold environments will now affect the Quasar Cannon's reload. Previously, it did not. On cold planets, the reload speed will drop by 2.5 seconds. On hot planets, the reload speed will increase by 2.5 seconds. The radar pulse that detects enemies on the minimap is now visible. Most of the automaton weapons will now have gotten tighter limits to how much the projectile they shoot can deviate from its weapon's muzzle angle. What this means is that situations where Devastators shoot sideways should be fixed, thank God. The weapons of the exosuits are now allowed small adjustments in the angles that they fire their projectiles versus their muzzle angle. This should make weapons more accurate. The ballistic shield now collides with grenades, okay. The unblock button should no longer disappear from the social menu. Block players can no longer join the blocker's lobby through recent players. Fixed a bug where enemies killed, missions played, and missions completed stats would not be properly displayed in the armory. They fixed an issue where a player can throw an unlimited amount of grenades. Helldivers now switch to the last active weapons when out of grenades. They fixed some text overlap. Burning effect applied to a player when a combat walker dies is now a normal burn. So once you escape from the combat walker, you will be on fire, so please jump. Yeah. Extraction shuttle can no longer take damage and prevent extraction. This is pretty good. New high-grade materials directly from Super Earth R&D have been utilized. I like that. On PC, you can now navigate the Super Credits menu with the WASD keys. Fixed an issue where the sample count and missions were incorrectly displayed. Levels no longer generate with blocked areas, preventing player progression. Your ship's bridge is no longer cast in perpetual shadow. Reduce situations where blue stratagems would bounce when placed next to the detector tower. This should make hell bombing it a bit easier. The War Bond menu now displays the correct emote and victory poses in the thumbnail. War Medals cap is now displayed in the UI. Fixed a bug where the Helldivers armor could appear invisible for other players. They've refined player reporting in the UI. They've fixed issue where Helldivers could be launched into the air if close to a Bow Titan or Factory Strata corpse. I hope this goes through because that was a big problem for several of my people. They fixed for the Factory Striders sometimes spawning an extra model after being destroyed. Reduce situations where Helldivers could spontaneously die while walking into seemingly walkable valleys on some planets. Okay, good. They fixed a rare issue on Arctic planets where players could spontaneously die close to large bodies of water. Lol. They fixed Pelican 1 sometimes leaving immediately after any player gets on board. Thank God for that fix. They fixed a bug where a Helldiver could get stuck in grenade idle state after throwing grenades. They fixed the superior packing methodology not working for other peers. The recent players list will now include hot joining players. Relaxed disconnection policy for PC users. Fixed an issue where previous sessions player names might not be saved correctly when restarting. Okay, that's pretty good. I'm happy to hear that. The defend event attack origin now visualized when hovering the planet. With the defend event attack origin is now visualized when hovering the planet with the defend event or the attack origin planet. Good. Implemented outlines for poorly readable texts. Okay, they've done several crash fixes which you can check out, but now I think it's time for the last and most crucial section of this. All right, I've been talking for 32 minutes. Now it's time for you guys to get to the most crucial section. Here we go. Let's talk about the known issues. Okay, the known issues are a big one. You know it, I know it, we all know it. Okay, the known issues tend to be difficult. They tend to be a source of a lot of contention. So let's go through it and try not to take them too badly. Okay, friend codes are bugged for now. You will not be able to invite people via friend code, which sucks, but they'll fix it hopefully soon. Players may be unable to join, to be joined or invited to the game. We know about this bug, so it's still here. They're trying to fix it. Players added to the recent players list will appear in the middle of the list. Players may experience delays in medals and super credit payouts. Hopefully that'll be fixed soon. Spear targeting is unable to target automaton spawners. They will fix this. Enemies that bleed out do not progress personal orders and eradicate missions. We understand. Arc weapons sometimes behave inconsistently and misfire. We are aware of this. Most weapons shoot below the crosshair when aiming down sights. We understand that. Plasma Punisher is unable to shoot out of the grenade of the shield generators. Yeah, they're still working on that fix, so please don't be too disappointed. But either way, shield is a crutch at higher level play, so try not to get too used to it. The stratagem beam might attach itself to an enemy but deploy to its original location. This is still consistent. Helldivers unable to stand up from crouching when surrounded by enemies, okay, because they'll be beating you down. The handcart ship module does not reduce the shield generator's pack's cooldown. They're working on that. Bow Titan sometimes does not take damage to the head. So some of you told me that you've been shooting the Bow Titans on the head, but it didn't die. This is the reason why. They finally admitted that it is a bug. But that being said, there are some weird situations where, yeah, so the head is the weak spot, but, you know, sometimes you just have to be aware that if you don't kill it, this is the reason why, okay? The charge's butt does not take damage from explosions. Okay. This one is a new issue. Hopefully it won't be too bad, but since the major order is automatons, we invite bug divers to play the automatons first until this issue is fixed, hopefully soon. Players may become stuck in the loadout when joining a game in progress. Reinforcement may not be available for players when joining a game in progress. Plan deliberation reaches 100% at the end of every defense mission. Raise flag of Super Earth objective does not show a progress bar. They're working on that. Mission count in the career tab being reset to 0 after every game restart. Well, I don't really care about my career tab. Some weapons descriptions are out of date and don't reflect their current design. Hopefully they fix that. And the adjudicator has the incorrect recoil values. Okay, hopefully they fix that as well. That brings us to the end, ladies and gents. Everything in this patch has been, I've just gone through it all. What I want to do now is I want to hear from you. What do you guys think of this patch? They promised that it was going to, have 100 plus changes. They've got 132. There are some changes that look a little sus. Might be close to a nerf, but I leave that to you. They've also done a lot of explanation for why they made these changes in a blog post. Again, both are linked. I'm not going to go through that here. But basically, I think that this should be really received positively. I do have to say that this changes to the stratagem was not something I expected. I actually expected way more weapon changes, but the stratagem changes are kind of welcome, so I'm kind of interested in that. But I really am hoping for more weapon changes because I want to see more variation in the weapons that we can use at higher levels. Still, the upgrades to the crossbow, the Eruptor, and all that should make them a bit more viable, so I'm looking forward to trying them out again. Giving us a little bit of variety might really help some missions, so I'm definitely going to be looking into that. Thank you very much for joining us today. It's been an absolute pleasure, guys. All right, this is what I live for. This is what I like, I like seeing these patches, the changes, and they seem to be listening to us. So hopefully this patch goes well. Let me know your feelings on this patch in the comments below. If you've tested some stuff, come back, comment. Let's have a discussion. Let's talk about this, all right? I want to know if you feel positively about these changes, if you feel negatively about these changes. Tell me in the comments. I want to talk to you, all right? But y'all post some troll shit, you're going to get banned, all right? I've already had to ban some people from my channel. I hate to do that again, all right? Let me know how you feel about these changes. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. And thank you very much for this. I hope you guys will enjoy this patch. Let's go have some fun, shall we? I'm going to go test some stuff now.